So welcome everybody. My name is Jonas. I work as a product marketeer for VaultSpeed since a little over 4 years now, I think. And today I will be explaining you how we tackled this exercise with VaultSpeed. I must say I started a bit late. We had some circumstances and stuff, so I started on Thursday. It was a challenge, but we managed to get it right, I guess. Only the descriptions on the website that will be posted later today, they might be a bit late, but they will get there eventually. But now to the exercise. So a little bit about VaultSpeed, and if you visit our booth, you will recognize the same illustration. It's a representation of our tool, and basically what we try to say here is that on the bottom level, you have your physical runtime. Well, VaultSpeed helps you to automate that physical runtime. You're not in the runtime, we help you to build it faster. So that's an important thing to know when you look at VaultSpeed. What else can we see here? It's how we connect this physical level to what we call the abstract level. So for example, in Data Vault, what we typically do is we integrate data sources, right? So here in your physical level, you have sources. They all contain fields with business keys and objects. Basically what you do to ingest them into your Data Vault model is you start tagging them. You start tagging them as, I want to model this as a hub. I want to model this as a satellite. I want to model this as a link or a non-historical link. Also the same for the attributes. I want to tag my business keys. I want to tag my subsequence attributes. I want to tag everything that I need to explain to VaultSpeed how I want to model my Data Vault. So the arrow here is basically you harvest metadata into VaultSpeed, you get that, and then we present you a starting model from which you can then correct it or accept it and tailor the Data Vault model to your needs. By doing that tagging, what will happen in the back, because these templates are all included in VaultSpeed, you don't have to build them yourself. We own them, we test them, and if there's anything wrong with it, we deliver the support for it, of course. But these templates in the back will actually derive two things. First, the code structure, the DDL structure that you want to deploy into your target platform. And two, the integration code. We know the source, we know the target, we know what the relationship is, so we can generate the code to load it. And that first part of VaultSpeed is a no-code approach. So you don't have to do any template coding there yourself. That is all driven by a graphical modeling interface. Then the second part is basically where you start building things for your presentation area. So if you look at your integration area here, your Data Vault, you might have a few cases there. I included one in the demo, where let's say you have, and I think in Willybald you had credit card details. Yes. So a credit card number, we all know they are not, you cannot invent them yourself. Yeah, you can invent them, but there's a certain validity check that they have to comply to. And if you run a check like that, you would want to run it on every credit card number that you have in your entire Data Vault. So let's say I have one here, I have one in this satellite, and there as well. What you can do then is, in the same way, you can tag them, and you can reuse that signature. Let's say we call it a credit card number. We can reuse that signature in the business template later on and write some logic on it. For example, the validity check of that credit card number, and automatically all the code will be generated for all the instances where we have somewhere in our Data Vault a credit card number where we can apply it on. That's just one example. With this template studio, you can build practically anything. So that's the way we see it. In the raw Vault layer, you need to quickly ingest a lot of metadata and ingest it into your integration layer and model it into your integration layer. In the area where you have the presentation area, we have bits and bridges out of the box. That's also a no-code approach. But stuff that you build on top, custom fields, custom calculations, those are the things you can build with Template Studio. So having said that, for the demo, we needed to make some decisions on tooling, right? You need VaultSpeed, of course, in this demo. That's a given. But sorry. What else did we use? We used Databricks. We have several customers running on Databricks, running large implementations on Databricks with Data Vault, of course, and that's working quite well, actually. We even had some conversions from, for example, a Synapse to a Databricks, based on several things, I guess, maybe the cost, or maybe something else, whatever. But yeah, that's a platform that is being more and more used to do Data Vault on, actually. We're also partnered with Databricks since recently. And because I have a conference coming up next week in San Francisco on Databricks, I thought, well, I'm building a demo anyway, so why not do it on that platform? So that saved me some time. What else do we use? We also use Apache Airflow. That's the tool of choice here for my orchestration of the load. As said in the beginning, VaultSpeed is not in the runtime. We can help you build the runtime. So we can help you to we generate actually the DAGs that define the load, that define the sequence of things that need to happen to run your load correctly. We can do that for Airflow, we can do that for Azure Data Factory, and we also have a generic version that you could apply into any scheduler that you like. Basically, then you get a JSON file that contains all the information, and you can write that, you can script that into your own scheduling tool. And that's a bit the tooling I used here in this demo. If there's any questions or specific questions on how to implement Data Vault on Databricks, I've written a short blog on that. It's on the Microsoft blog. I can send you the link if you like. Oh, sorry. But next is some idea of how I tackled the ingestion. So Databricks has this data loader capability, and I didn't want to bother with all the insert scripts, so I used the CSV files, used the data loader to ingest them into Databricks, and I used 3 different schemas, one for every period, for every source, so 6 in total. On top of those schemas, I wrote some views, and these views, I could populate them with each schema depending on the load I wanted to mimic. So that's a bit how I did the setup for on the ingestion side of the data. And from there on, we could start to do the automation of the data vault model and the rest with VaultSpeed. This is how they were loaded. So I had hourly loads, and in between I set the correct CSV file, of course, to be loaded. And then for the snapshots, we had done a snap. So this load started at 4 o'clock, meaning that the actual load date of the data is somewhere around, between 4 and 5 minutes after 4, depending on the duration of the load. So if I take a snapshot, then at 5 o'clock, or I could have taken it at 4:30, for example, I should get a snapshot that gives me the situation of this period, and so on and so on. So that's a bit how I did the setup for the snapshot of the data to do the reporting later on. Now, once that stuff was done, I actually started looking at you have the source data model, you have the conceptual data model. We had a meeting with people here. There were, I see 2 people here already, where we discussed what this model was supposed to look like a bit. So based on that, we had a conceptual data model, source data model, and we tried to marry those 2 together, automating them into a working data vault model, of course. This slide is a bit the same thing. So first use case, well, I added it in the beginning because once you loaded the data vault, you want to test whether it is loaded correctly. And for the JEDI test, I actually used what I just told. I used our template studio, because I can build anything with template studio on top of our data vault. Actually generated views that recreate my source. So this is a pretty simple version where you join the hub to a bunch of satellites, or multi-active satellites. That's also included here, I think. You could add complexity in there as much as you like. But to give you an idea, so this was a view that was created. And what you get then is, of course, the ability to do your checks, because then you can use that JEDI view on top of the product hub here to do the compare with the source. So, and that's a two-way street, right? You want to know that everything has been loaded into the data vault, and of course the other way around. As you can see here, I only get my unknown 0 records. So that's logical. They don't exist in the source, they exist in the data vault. And the other way around, 0 records, which is what I expected. So my JEDI test for that example succeeded. Next, the hierarchical link. There's a bunch of things you need to do here in VaultSpeed. First, in the raw vault or in the source editor, you need to identify this link, and it's this one here, as a self-reference. So that's just dragging and dropping it onto the correct attributes, and then that link is created for you. And this is what that looks like. So on the product category, I have another link, the self-reference link and link satellite that contain the data on the hierarchical relationship. And that's how that is loaded into the raw vault. On that same image, you have your product category. So basically what you want to do, we have our products, we have product categories, we want to build a dimension that shows the entire product dimension, basically. So both the product and the product category you should be able to write a quick query that shows you the entire product hierarchy of the web shop and the roadshow. So I built pits on these 2 hubs. So the pits are here and there. Then I could write a dimension on each of the hubs. So that's one thing you need to do. And a dimension you can also perfectly automate. There's several studio templates available already on our community. You just download them and you adapt them to whatever you want to do differently, and you get a dimension generated right into your target platform. The second thing I wanted to do is to create a bridge on this hierarchical link, because it's like referring to itself all the time. I want to open that up. I want to have a bridge table that gives me the product, and then the first category, and then the second category, and then the third category on top, so that you get the whole hierarchy in a bridge table, and then you can easily query it. And in VaultSpeed you can do that, so you just select your hubs, and then you can select adjacent hubs to that. And here, because you will have the same hub a couple of times, that's because the product category will occur multiple times, you can add a prefix to some of these hubs. So I added Oberkat, Oberkat, Oberkat to have a distinction between this entire, between the levels in this product hierarchy. And by doing that, we actually completed the dimensional model we need to show the entire product dimension as a whole. So both the product and the product category. And then this is a subset of how the data is then presented. And I think that concludes the hierarchical link. Multi-active satellites, I can be really short on that, so that's supported out of the box in our source editor. You just tag this object here, the address, OneOrt, as a satellite, and then you have to select this multi-active flag, and you have to create or set the subsequence. So the from date is here, the sequence that differentiates between the multiple customer records for the address. And by setting it like that, it will be automatically generated as a multi-active satellite. And this is then the data set that you get. So where is it? I looked for an instance where you had a customer that lived at the same address, because that's really multi-active, right? If they lived at the same address at the same time, so they had 2 houses, I don't know, 2 homes, or some other weird thing that was going on. But they were in the data set, and yeah, having this multiple addresses for a customer is one thing, but here it's really multi-active, because you couldn't even distinguish. You couldn't have one customer at that address if you selected and used the from date as well. So a good good example of why you needed this multi-active. Then, identifying your relationships in VaultSpeed is also quite easy. So it's basically also drag and drop. So you drag the relationship using the editor, you save it, and then automatically a link is created for you. There is, there's not that much to it. That's standard out-of-the-box support for Data Vault. Same thing for the, this is an example of how there was an example in there that there were deletions of this relationship, and this is just some proof there that there were indeed a few deletions between the orders and the positions, and that was captured by the Data Vault model. An identifying relationship was also there between the Vereinspartner and the customer. I don't know the concept of Vereinspartner we don't know it. It's German, I guess. Anyway, the way you do it, same thing. You create a link, this time in both directions. It's a weird thingy in the source, but actually, I was talking to Dirk yesterday, and he said, "Yeah, I've seen occurrences of that kind of source modeling at really, really big companies as well. The ones that handle our banking transactions, for example, they probably do that, or they do that as well, apparently." What you can also do in our source modeler, and this is a perfect place to show that, is you can see it from the source, but you can also directly derive your data or generate a Data Vault model that is based on this source only. So it's not integrated with other sources, but you can get an idea of what the Data Vault model will look like if you consider this source only. And that's useful while modeling to see what will happen once you really deploy it into a Data Vault release. So in this case, just 2 links are created between both hubs. Nothing really special there. And then in the data, I started looking for what the history is then between people that change from association partner or Vereinspartner. So you had a few occurrences where they had three changes. So in each load there was a change, and the customer changed from association partner. All captured in the history of that link. What else did I want to explain here? There's also a few instances of customers that do not have a Vereinspartner. So you can see here, these are the 2 orphan records, but the others are based on the load. So the first load, the second load, and the third load. And the blue ones are the ones that do not have, so customers that have no association partner linked to their customer record. And then one more thing there. This is then a case where the relationship changes. So this customer number 16, first was part of the Glück auf partner, and then went to Volle Rosa to go then back to the first one. Apparently the grass was not greener on the other side. And to end relationships without a key. In this case, so this is about the delivery. And in this case, I just modeled it as a transactional link. That seemed the easiest to do for me. It's the same thing. You right-click the object and you set the type to non-historized link or transactional link. That's a synonym. We use the other name. And basically, that's what you need to do, and automatically it will be generated and created for you in that way. So this is what the Data Vault model looks like, and there's this small t here is the indication that it is transactional, so you can derive that looking at the Data Vault model as well. And this is a representation then of the data set, so you get your keys, but they also get a hash key. The delivery date is in there, so that's how the data is loaded. It's transactional, every record gets added. We do have some support. There's several use cases where you have transaction tables where at some point you can also have a delete. There were customers that asked us this question. We have a problem there. In that case, we have an option to insert that delete, but as a negative of the record that was deleted. So then you still have the record, but you can, you have both of them. And if you do a total, your metrics or whatever numbers.
But you're doing this negative insert.
Yeah, it's a parameter, so it's not by default, but if you activate it, we will do a negative insert on a delete, and then your totals or whatever you want to calculate on top of that transactional link will work.
If you've got a full load or something, you have to know what the delivery is around.
Sorry?
To know what the delivery, if you only get the full load of the transaction, then it's okay.
Yeah, it's supported in a full load. So full loads, we can always do delete management. We can also do delete management in case of incremental loads, but then you need, you need like to have a CDC system that has the indication of the action that happened. Otherwise, there's really no way to know whether a record was deleted or not. So incremental loads, but you need this CDC flag or status or whatever. Early integration, so this was the case where we had the different ways of modeling on the order compared from the webshop to the roadshow source. So I chose to split the order of the roadshow in an order and a position, and I used the product ID here as the second part of my business key for the position of the roadshow. So that's one thing, splitting that object in that one source. The second thing is to, is then to group them back together, so across the sources. So here you can see our hub grouping window. And for example, here I have my order hub. So by explaining here that I want my web shop order object and my roadshow order object in the same hub, I will get one hub with two satellites. And depending on whether you set them as multi or single master, they will get a business key collision code with the source short name loaded. So that's a bit how we set that up in VaultSpeed. And then you can also choose, because there's of course the order of the business keys. So I chose to have the order ID always first when you do the hash calculation. And then here I have the position, and here I mimicked the product ID as the position. So at least they are in the same order. And then the name of the keys that are used then in the hub table, you can also change them. So the order ID is the same in the two sources, but here we have both position and product ID. So I changed the name to indicate that we have both in there and that it's a combined hub table from different sources, and that the business keys were not really aligned. So in the data model, what you get then is the position, hub orders, a link in between, and two satellites on the link, one for the roadshow source and one for the web shop source, and the same for the hub tables basically. And then here I try to show in a quick query of how that really works. So here you have the load of, so the different loads cycle IDs are indicated here, the number of records that were loaded in each cycle, but then also the source BK. So this is the hub contains all the records, but using this source business key collision code, you can still see from which source this record was loaded, and you also get a record source that tells you basically the same thing in this case. Reference tables can be quite quick on this one. So same thing, tag it as a reference table. And you can choose whether to truncate the data if you always want to have the latest version, or to not truncate it, and then you can use the load date to go through the history of the reference table. Next one, and this is an example, quite self-explanatory. But indeed, you could see that in the second instance of the load, there were two records added to this historical reference table where you have a new, what is this termintroje? That's the fact that you deliver on time or not, right? Yeah. So the number of days between, they changed a little bit there, that hierarchy. So that was indeed loaded into the second load. Duplicates loading the data. What's my time? I have 18 minutes left. Duplicates loading the data. Well, this is a staging table, and this is the actual raw vault table. And as you can see, for product 2020, product 20, it was actually a record that was exactly the same. So in that case, the hash diff will recognize that, and the is equal flag in the staging is set to yes, and we filter those out. So in the raw vault, you will have one instance of product 20. We are also working, by the way, so the error tables on this are not in VaultSpeed yet. They will be there in, I think, 1 or 2 releases. That you still also have a record of the fact that that record was a duplicate, although it was exactly the same. The second one is really a record where you have a change. And in that case, you want both of them in your raw vault, although it could cause you trouble later on. But in that case, we want to have both of them because it could be a change that we really want to capture, that we want to know about. The problem is that you would have duplicate load dates. So when you would start building pits and dimensions on those pits, it would cause problems, of course. The way we fix that is by adding 2 microseconds to the load. The order, if you can give us an order, you can do that. If you don't, we decide it for you. Sometimes in some databases, you have something like a row num or something that gives you an indication. But if you use, for example, a CDC solution, where you have a log position, we can derive the order as it was in the source. So then it can be exact. You will have both the records. You will have a distinct load date based on another attribute that gives you the order in which the data should be loaded. There were also rows without a business key. And in that case, basically what VaultSpeed will do is we will load the hub, but we will attach it to the orphan record. So the satellite, this is the query of the satellite. This is the business key of the hub. It didn't have a business key, so it will be loaded to the -1 record into the satellite until there is a version of that business key that comes in where you will have a new hub record, you will have new satellites, and these satellites will be closed. They will get a delete flag, yes, because they don't exist anymore in the source. So they will be loaded into the raw vault, but you don't have a business key, so it's hard to add them. But you could have like a simple report on, do I have record like this in my satellite? Then it should be an error. So in a way, this is a way to catch the error and to be able to do some reporting on it. Changes in the customer. This is a standard approach in Data Vault. So it's the hash diff that is being used to check whether a customer record changed or not. And then based on that, you get a new satellite record. That's standard Data Vault functionality that is, of course, part of VaultSpeed as well. Same for the deletions. What do we do on a delete? In this case, I chose for an insert-only setup. We can also do a setup with end dating. In the case of an insert-only setup, you will get an insert on delete, and the delete flag will be set to yes, and that's the way you can track your delete. For the case that you want to have end dating on your Data Vault, on your satellites, that's a parameter you can set. Once you set that, once you activate that, you will get end dating on your satellites. We won't do an insert then. We will then do an update of the last valid satellite record. So, and that's how you solve these deletions. Links without a parent. There's 2 ways to solve this. In case the primary key and the business key are equal, which was the case in this example, I think, well, at least the way I modeled it, then it will be loaded into your link, so there's not really a problem. The only cool thing you can do is actually to set your early arriving facts parameter to yes, and then the hub will also be loaded from the link. So if the link is, if that key is missing in the hub, you will have it in the hub. You will not have it in the satellite, but I'll show that in the next slide. If the primary key is not equal to the business key, that's another problem, but we can fix that as well. And then you need to set your referential integrity parameters. And in this case, actually, if you have this on yes and this on no, we will not load the link, but it will be loaded into an error table. If you set both to yes, you will load it into an error table, but you will also force the link load, and then it has to be fixed later on. That's a bit how you can solve it with VaultSpeed. A lot of options there, but yeah, that's based on what you need, basically. In my case, that ended up like this. So this is a query on that data set. I have the link, I have the satellite link, and I have the hub, which was loaded record source from the delivery address. So that was from the other table. And then the satellite is empty because I really don't have a record that could be loaded from the real source table, of course. Once you load it into the hub, it will resolve. Deletions of orders. That was basically the same use case as a few ones back. So we use a delete flag to fix that. Same thing as the deletions on the customer table. It's not really much there. And then the product hierarchy, you also had some changes there. So thinking back on the setup we built in the first use case, I think number 1, we set it up with the pits and the bridges. So if you start querying on that now and you set the correct snapshot date, you can then see the changes that happen into this product hierarchy. So for example, yeah, this, I'm not going to try to...
I want to hear you reading it.
Okay.
No, sorry.
Beta, rode beta, whatever. So they changed hierarchies. That's a bit what happened. Yeah, and I picked one example, but the entire thing was the same, of course. And then in use case 14, we had to calculate some key figures based on whatever we've loaded into our data vault. Again, I built a few structures on top of the raw data vault with bits and bridges. That's a no-code approach. You can just configure them in the tool. But the dimensions I built with the template studio. What you get then are 3 dimensions, and I also created a bridge table. That is also something you can, I showed that in one of the earlier ones. A bridge table that connects these 3 business concepts. And then I could calculate I think this is the number of products that were ordered per product. And of course also the revenue. And apparently the melons or something, they came out on top. Really don't know why that is, but apparently they sell a lot of them. And then a few others there where we had to calculate the Termintreue. Jesus, I'm starting to speak German. Where you had to calculate that. I wanted to have the order dimension there as well. And I had 2 bridges, the one I had already built, and the one that I have built, another one that I've built between the delivery and the order. And then basically you can very quickly check which orders are still open. Open orders have not been delivered, so they don't have a record in that non-historized link. And the delivered orders are the ones that do have a record in the delivery NHL. That's basically how it works. And then finally, of course, calculating if the web shop delivers on time, and apparently that was not very good. And here, by the way, we used this historical reference table to join the descriptions of the Termintreue. The business rules that we can add, there were 2 examples of that. The first one was where you want to have the straight connection between the order and the Vereinspartner. You just build a bridge for that. It's nothing difficult. And the second one was where you wanted to build an additional link between the order of the roadshow and the customer in the other source. And that's where you can, in VaultSpeed, use what we call a link across sources. So basically, it was supposed to be on the credit card details, although there were some issues apparently with that as well. But that's basically how you build that link. It will be deployed into the business vault, but you can already model it in the source modeler. You can actually use this window here to select the other source, drag that object onto the canvas as well, draw your relationship, and that will be created for you automatically. Lineage, there's two ways you can do that. You can do it manually using your graphical interface of VaultSpeed. What you need to do is, we have all that metadata sitting there in our metadata repository. So what you need to do is create a configuration. Which attributes do I want to export from the source lineage, so the entire chain actually. And then you can just export that using just running that configuration against a certain data vault release. And then you get a file that contains this entirely. You can use this doing the GUI, but you can also do this using the REST API. We do not have a lineage interface embedded in our tool. We might do it at some point, but we think there's enough solutions on the market to have that. One of them being, this is the API, so all the calls you need. This is embedded in the front end, so you can directly start playing with these API calls from our front end, not having to worry about authentication and stuff, so that's pretty handy. And this is another way, so I deployed on Databricks. What they have, and that's pretty cool, I discovered it a bit earlier, but they have a way of doing lineage based on everything you've run in the past 30 days. So I've loaded this data vault. I think there's a hub here, the product hub. Well, this is where it came from, and the cool thing is that they also have this on the column level. So that's a bit what we mean by there's other ways to do lineage. We have not created that in our tool yet, in a graphical way. Error handling. The error handling you need to do in your orchestration tool, of course. We deploy the logic to orchestrate it into Airflow DAGs. So we generate the DAGs, you deploy them into Airflow, and you can start running your load. So the error handling is entirely based on what you can do in your scheduler. In this case, Airflow, where you have like the restartability options. All the code that we generate is restartable. So if the load fails at some point and you need to rerun something, using the features in your scheduler, you can actually restart them. You can do a full restart of the entire load or just partial restart. Depends on what went wrong, I guess. This is an overview of the duration of the load, so you could also check then whether there's certain scripts that take a bit too long. Also important. Data quality check. I was thinking of an example here. It wasn't really stated in the exercise, so I invented one myself. And there were a lot of these credit card numbers in there. So I was thinking, well, let's check if they're actually valid. And in Databricks, you have a function called the loon check that will run a check on the validity of a credit card number. And somebody is getting a bit scared. So remember, we had a certain revenue with the web shop, pretty good. The problem is, all the red credit cards are fake. They're all fake. I was even amazed that you guys made at least some that are actually valid. Because that's not easy. Maybe it's yours, I don't know.
I stick with data vault, I won't go into credit card fraud.
Anyway, I built that using our template studio, and it's pretty easy to do and to build your own data quality checks on top of the raw data vault using the templates with VaultSpeed. You can also use the API to push our metadata into whichever tool you want to use for data quality. For example, on Snowflake, we work together there with DataOps Live. They have a whole package around data quality, also in combination with Colibra. So using the API, you can feed that metadata where it needs to go. Orchestration, this is our flow management control. So this is where you configure these workloads. We can generate them for Airflow, for Azure Data Factory, or for the generic version. I already said that in the beginning. But you can see some of the configurations you can do here. So a daily interval, the source connection name that you need to configure also in Airflow, the connection name of the ETL. This is the part of the ID of my Databricks cluster. That's what you need to add there. And then basically this will generate it and you deploy it into Airflow and you get your DAG right away. And you can start running your data. Deployment, there's 3 ways to do a deployment in VaultSpeed. You can do it directly on the data platform. That's what you typically do in a development environment, of course, to test the stuff that you've built. You can also do it into, that's this option here, into a Git repository, so that all the code that VaultSpeed generates is automatically ingested into your Git repo, which you can then feed into your CI/CD pipelines accordingly. And you can also use custom, you can build your own custom deploy scripts. Then you have to select this option here, and then it will do whatever you've written in that script. So that should work, but there is an option to make it more tailored to your own needs. Scheduling, briefly mentioned as well, so schedule intervals, concurrency, and the start date of a load you can configure in the flow management control center. And then almost there, the supported databases are on the right. So we support Snowflake, Databricks, and all the others that are mentioned there. But we also support, we're not in runtime, so you can deploy into any runtime you want. For example, if you use DBT, you can actually generate all of those, all the integration scripts into your own DBT environment. You can run it from there. We currently support DBT for Snowflake and are building DBT for Databricks. You could also use Matillion ETL or Talent and a few others out there. But if you're using an ETL tool and you want to have everything there under the same roof in that runtime, you could use it. You don't have to. You can also just use the procedures or the notebooks on your data platform. And then finally, installation requirements. Yeah, VaultSpeed is a SaaS solution, so you don't really need any install on that side. There's no virtual machines or stuff that is needed. You're always running on the latest version. So once we do a release, that's done for you. You don't need to worry about it yourself. And that means, of course, that you always have the latest Data Vault 2.0 support and every template that we support that you don't have to write yourself. There is, and that's the one that sits here, there is a Java agent that we need to harvest the metadata from your sources and to deploy the code into your runtime. But that agent can be installed, it uses Java, so it can run basically anywhere. And I think that almost concludes it, if I may end. So VaultSpeed, what do we do, what do we have, and how do we make this work? We have a metadata repository that stores all the metadata that you need, that allows you to enrich it. You can store anything in there. It's also open, so you can get all the metadata out of there again. We have a template engine, but with pre-built automation templates for Data Vault 2. So we support them. You don't have to worry about those yourself. And to bind these two together, to actually feed these vast volumes of metadata into the templates, we have a GUI, a modeler GUI that helps you to tag the attributes and the objects according to what you want to model in your Data Vault. And that's a bit how it works. So those are the 3 main components of VaultSpeed. There was one thing that was not included, data model changes, really important, we think. VaultSpeed also has very extensive support for that. We have over 600 rules checking for every type of change you might have. I listed a few of them. I think these are things that most of you have come across at some point. I'll skip this one and then just thank everybody for joining the session. If you want to know a bit more about the exercise, you can email me. I just did it, so everything is still fresh in my mind. I'll also be at our booth downstairs, so if you have any specific questions, please feel free to ask. If you want to contact somebody in the region that is speaking German, then you can contact my teammate Florian. He's also here on this conference. So feel free to come by and have a chat. And thank you.